If you failed the BCBA exam, this might be the video that finally helps you pass. This is the number one thing that helped me pass the BCBA exam after failing 5 times. It's not a specific program or the amount of hours I was studying. It's really something really simple, and you're gonna be like, why didn't I think of that? The number one way to pass the BCBA exam is to understand the way that you learn. And if you're not really sure about how to do it, I'm gonna share some things to help you figure it out. Now, I'm going to share with you every resource that I used, how much money I spent, how many hours I spent studying, what worked, what didn't work, and the exact reason that I finally passed. Because honestly, I don't know how many people openly talk about failing the exam so many times. And at this point, I feel like an expert, so I'm going to share my expertise. But also, if you're feeling discouraged, overwhelmed, thinking that, it's time to give up, this is your number one sign to not do that. And make sure you watch till the end, because I'm going to tell you exactly what I would do if I had to start over. So I registered for my exam in March 2024, and just like everybody else, I researched the best study materials, and overall I saw that BDS models was probably the number one choice. Now the BDS models were about $400 for a 6-month access. And with them, it was really directly aligned with the Cooper book. However, it was really adversive for me. They have it set up as like a 3 study cycle. So you'll do like 8.1, 8.2, 8.3. It's mostly just mock questions. And what was happening is like I would score high on the first one, and then the second one I would do okay, the third one I would pass, and then I would have to review the first one again. And sometimes I would score even lower or higher. It would just be like a little roller coaster ride, the way that they have you do these models. Overall, I rated that one a 2 out of 10. The next resource I had was Pass the Big ABA Exam Manual, which I absolutely loved. I loved how it just spread out the whole task list so that you can understand how everything is connected. And it's really easy to read. It's a lot smaller than the big Cooper book. However, it's not enough to pass the exam. So I think it was about $150 for that book, but I do rate it an 8 out of 10. Next one was the SAF Med cards, which you should be using for fluency of all the terms within the Cooper book or within ABA rather. And they really focus on speed. I didn't so much focus on speed. I focused on just like knowing all the content, but I really loved it. I used it in between like my meetings or when I was going in between sites. So it was really something really quick and easy to use. I rate that a 9 out of 10. The cost for that was probably about $60 too. The next one I had was Study Notes ABA, which I really love how they compare the content to real life examples, which really helps you get a grasp of all the content. I used their app, which was really affordable. It was about $20 a month. And the number one thing I really liked about it, which increased the ranking on this resource, was that they have weekly live study sessions within the app. And so what they do is one of the people come on there and they'll answer any questions you might be struggling with. They'll do that for about a half an hour, and then they'll leave the chat open for all of us to just connect and just talk to each other about concepts that we understood or misunderstood, just to get more focus. And then they give you alerts every week so that you kind of never miss it. So I really like that. I gave it a 7 out of 10. However, the questions that they have as far as fluency and as far as mock preparation, it's not rigorous enough, but it does help you to understand things that you might not be so strong in. With all of those, I cut out the BDS models, I used the rest of the resources, and I was ready to take my first attempt. It was about November 2024. And with that, I did not feel like I understood a lot of the questions. I feel like it took me a lot of time. I actually ran out of time. I still had about 30 questions left with 10 minutes. So at that point, I was just trying to get through, make sure I answer all of them. Overall, my score for that was a 392, which wasn't really that bad, but it didn't really seem like a true reflection of what I actually knew. So after that test, I was a little bit emotional, but I pushed through, and I was just like, I'm so close to the end. Let me just try to see if I can take it again and just brush up on maybe the format of the exam questions. So with that, I went to the ABA Wizard mock exams, which those ended up being, I think, like almost $150 for each. And then they also had mini mocks, which were a little bit cheaper. I did think that they were a little bit closer to the rigor of the exam, so I would rate them an 8 out of 10. So the next thing I did was the ethics book, which had really great information. It was an excellent read, very easy to read. Overall, I rate that a 10 out of 10. It really helped to align with things that were directly on the test. Now it's 30 days later, I'm doing my second attempt, and this was the absolute worst experience I've ever had. It was the worst testing site. Number one, I thought I booked the same testing site because the addresses were very similar, but I ended up pulling up to the wrong testing site, which kind of threw me off when I got there. And then when I walked into the testing room, the Pearson centers, they're supposed to be secure testing sites, and it's supposed to be minimal distractions, everything to keep you focused on the test. But this testing site, their table was aligned with other people, just divided by two dividers, so you can't see who's on both sides of you. And it would be like every time I would go to answer a question on the test, it would like shake the table. So then I was getting really frustrated and already kind of emotional because the test questions I still didn't fully understand every single time. And so I tried not to touch the table, but it was like people who are next to me, if they touched the table, then it would shake. So every single time it's shaking and I'm reading through the question, I would have to read it again and like calm myself down so I could read it again to get through it. I also struggled with time again. Like at the end, I found myself racing just to answer questions. And by the end of that testing session, my score was about a 386, which was no surprise to me because I didn't feel secure in that at all. So that was the worst testing experience. And I told you I went back to the BACB and we worked it out with Pearson where I was able to get a retest where I didn't have to pay for it. However, they gave me like a limited hold. So I had a window of doing that within 6 months. But after that attempt, I was feeling really like defeated. I was exhausted from studying. I was struggling to connect what was really missing, and I just wanted to clear my head. So I made a vow to like take a 30-day break just to decompress. That 30-day break ended up being 90 days, which was really good for me, like mental health wise, physical wise. Throughout that time, I was still reading my Cooper book passively, so it wasn't like I was discarding all the information altogether. And the next resource that I used was the ABA Wizard study program. Now that program was about $300 for 12 months access, and it comes with different mini mocks. It comes with mini short videos, probably less than 2 minutes. It doesn't teach the material much, but it's more of a trial and error with brief explanations. So overall, I probably rated about like a 7 out of 10. Even with the ABA Wizard, I was able to then tap into ChatGPT a little bit more. So things that I didn't really understand, I would ask ChatGPT specifically to help me get a better grasp of it. So I use those kind of simultaneously. Now I had booked for my third attempt. At this point, I was probably like halfway through the ABC Wizard because I took a little bit of time off. But with this third attempt, it was the total opposite from the second attempt. So if I had the worst testing session then, this was probably the best testing session. When I got there, I felt comfortable. I ended up having a private room because they overbooked all the rooms. So it was like totally opposite than what I experienced the first time. However, even with that, this was probably the worst score I got on the test. It was all the way down on a 376. But overall, this was probably the truest reflection that I felt that I knew on the test. After that attempt, I had the rest of the summer. I continued with the ABA Wizard. I was also using ChatGPT for further explanations. I went back to the past big ABA exam manual. And then I was also reviewing mock exam questions on ABA Exam Review, and they were absolutely free. I really loved their videos and their questions. At first, the earlier questions are a little bit easier, but now if you were to look at them, they kind of match the rigor of the test. So I completely recommend them, and I give them a 9 out of 10. Now I'm at my fourth attempt, which was about October 2025. And at this point, I did feel more confident than I've ever been. Maybe not 100% on all concepts. However, I felt I was good enough to at least pass the test. And this was the first test where my timing, I didn't run out of time. I actually had a couple extra minutes to review anything extra. At the end of this test, I got a 398. Now, I was still pretty emotional about some stuff, but I had to keep pushing through. I think I was mostly exhausted just from all the studying that I was doing and just feeling like, okay, I need to pass this test. I need to pass this test. So the thing that I really doubled down on was like, okay, I keep messing up on understanding what these mock questions are asking. So at this attempt, I was fully focusing on mocks, not trying to read through content any longer. But with the mocks, I had constantly come across the understanding the behavior mock exam questions, and I really liked how difficult they were. So I ended up purchasing his mocks, 2 of them, full-length mocks. They were about $50 each, and they're very wordy and very confusing, which was really great preparation for the test. I do rate them a 10 out of 10 because out of all the resources that I used, I did feel very strongly confident with that resource. with my fifth attempt, December 2025, this was the first time that I really understood a majority of the questions than I ever had before. The things that I was getting mixed up on were some of the content issues where the answer seemed so close and I feel like I might have picked the wrong one. And this one was great because I was able to go back, because I would remember some of the questions, and go back inside the Cooper book to find the answer. And literally, this is how I knew that they took Cooper, whatever the content was in Cooper, and they just put it into a form of a test, because the legit same question that was on the mock exam, I found that same scenario inside of the book and I saw the answer, and I had chosen the wrong answer. So I was like, all right, I need to buff up on some of these simpler concepts that, I thought I knew, but I don't have them solidly. So I ended up purchasing the Understanding Behavior Beast Slayer course, which phenomenal resource, really, really phenomenal. He has short, digestible videos that are teaching, not just giving general content. He has mini mocks after each section. He's chunked similar sections, like as far as B and G, those areas, he's chunked them together because they're literally the same thing. One is just like concept and the other one is applying. And he did the same thing for like E, ethics, and I, personnel. So it's like a lot of the things were clumped together, which really made it a lot easier for me to understand and fully see how things are just so connected in this ABA exam task list. With that, I also purchased his mini mocks tests, which were a great additional resource after I finished the whole Beast Slayer course. I believe the Beast Slayer course was about almost $300, and they do have discounts for it, and then you have access for about 6 months. With the mini mocks, you have 2 attempts to take each of them, and then he gives you detailed explanations for all. So I give that resource again another 10 out of 10. All the resources that I used, none of them were actually able to lock me into a point where I felt like, okay, I know this and I'm going to pass this. What I had to do was, I realized some things about myself. Like growing up throughout my years, I've always been really good at math. Math has just always been something that I've been able to grasp and hold on to. And even with studying, I've been able to use steps so that I can get to the answer every single time. So I literally was like, how can I make that the concepts that I understand in math be something that I understand with ABA? So I went to ChatGPT and I literally said, hey, I'm really good at understanding math concepts. I understood how we use steps to get to the answer. We can repeat those steps every single time and it's always going to get us to the answer. How can I use the same application to apply it to this particular concept? For instance, because this was one of the ones I messed up on, was SDs versus MOs. I was very specific because I knew the things that I wasn't really sure that I had a strong grasp on. And ChatGPT literally broke it down into steps that I could use. I practiced it on different assimilated mock questions, and then I went back to the Beast Slayer and used those same methods on the Beast Slayer course, and I would have it every single time. So that was the thing that just clicked for me, just understanding the way that I learn and applying it to what I'm actually doing. So now I'm back for my last attempt, which was March 2026. And for this one, I didn't take any breaks. At the end, I actually had 10 questions left to review and I only had 5 minutes left. So my timing was still a little bit off. But at that point, throughout my whole journey, I was relying on God, Jesus Christ, to give me direction and to help me maintain my emotions. So in that moment, I literally asked God for help, and he helps me with every single question. He kind of lit up each answer, kind of like a redundancy prompt. And that was the one I selected, and I kept going and I didn't doubt myself. And at the end of that test, I was like, you know what? I was like, this is the most confident I've ever felt. So even if I don't pass the test this time, I literally know I'm going to pass the next time because I know what I am missing. I saw most of the questions. I understood most of them. That was the first time I ever felt like that. I was able to answer some really quickly, which I don't know if I was able to feel so confident in doing that before I would do it, but do it slow just to make sure. Where this one I was clicking through and I was going through and it didn't even feel like 4 hours anymore. It just felt like some time had passed because I was so locked in. And I walked up to the front desk and the lady handed me the paper and I opened it up and I saw that I passed and I was just like, wow, this is it. I passed my exam, and it was just the greatest feeling. And it wasn't even like the piece of paper was the greatest feeling, seeing pass, even though that was really a joy. I literally went to my car, sat there in silence, and just thought about my whole journey of getting here. And I think that part was the part where I was just very grateful for every step of it. So if I had to do this whole process again, it probably wouldn't have taken me so many attempts. But the first thing I would have started with was learning my learning style. And mine's was math, but for you, it can be anything. And I mean, literally anything. If you are good at English or science, use those concepts of what you understand about that topic and ask GPT to break it down so you can understand ABA a lot more clear and distinctly. Even if it's something like you're really good at basketball or you're really good at gaming. So those are skills. So find out what about those skills are able to click for you so that you're able to apply it to another learning setting. That's the first thing I would do. And that's absolutely free. It's on ChatGPT. The next thing I would do is purchase all the understanding behavior full mocks, mini mocks, Beast Slayer course. They are absolutely worth it. They're absolutely affordable compared to all the other things that I did. But that is definitely the next spot. After that, you can definitely use the ABA review exam videos on YouTube. I told you the ones that he's been doing now since 2026 started. They are very much aligned with the rigor of the test. And then you should definitely order the Pass the Big ABA exam review manual and the SAF Meds cards. They are definitely worth it. And then, of course, your number one resource is going to be the Cooper book. I don't know, because I've heard that some people have passed the test without even reading that book. I don't know how they did that, but that is a must have. And then last but not least, it's going to be that ethics book that I told you. That's a really good read, and it's going to knock out ethics for you so you really understand it. If you thought for 1 second about quitting, now is not the time to do that. You have to keep going. You got to figure out your learning style. You got to apply that learning style so you get the content, and you got to pass that exam. Good luck, and reach out to me if you would like to have any of my notes.